The events of Path of Life take place a few months after the events of Navis. You see Skadi and the Doctor meet up in Grand Faro before going to the Eye of Iberia. Most of the residents here have moved inland, and many Penal battalion soldiers have been dispatched here. Calcit arrives at Grand Faro to act as Iberia's official envoy. 8 days ago, aegir had contacted Iberia to announce that they will establish a waterway to connect aegir's home territories with land. At the Eye of Iberia, the Inquisitors wait for aegir to confirm a time frame. Just then, they receive a signal from aegir above the skies, and see countless bionic drones above their heads. Clementia, one of aegir's chief designers of warfare, invites them to visit the city of Millenarium in order to explain the details of the waterway program. Carmen decides to send both Irene and Jordi to join Calcit. Within the sea, Ulpianus, along with Rosciante, reach a deep trench. Here, we learn that Ulpianus distanced himself from the hunters to gain more information about the seaborn. Soon after that, the Iberian envoys arrive at Millenarium. Although they were given briefing videos explaining possible encounters in aegir, Jordi and Irene couldn't help but marvel at how technologically advanced the city is. The duo then run into a scholar from the Institute of Prehistoric Studies named Avitus. Just as Avitus was about to introduce them to their culture, a little handy from the Sea Patrol, also known as Hand of the Saint in Iberia, advises them to leave a newly designated investigation zone. Irene decides to stay behind and wait for the Sea Patrol, while Jordi and Avitus head to the Sophon Theatrum, a public arena for hosting debates. Over at Sea Patrol, Underflow, or rather Prefecta Secunda, is discussing the seaborn issue with a scholar named Blandus. Suddenly, Secunda received a report that one of the waterway program's data scientists, by the name of Tulia, had gone missing. Although this doesn't affect the waterway program, the timing of the incident is rather suspicious. Secunda then quickly rushes over to the investigation zone. Believing that the Church of the Deep might be involved, Irene decides to join the investigation. Switching over to the Doctor and Calcit, Calcit initially feels uneasy about the Doctor, but after reassuring that the Doctor had no memories about the sea, she becomes relieved. Next, Skadi and Laurentina take the Doctor and Calcit around the city for a tour. The Doctor is interested in aegir's technology, notably a defunct beacon launcher. The launcher was initially invented to create a network for interstellar travel, but it was suspended due to the seaborn outbreak in aegir. Meanwhile, Gladia meets with Clementia to discuss the issues related to the waterway program and the seaborn while admiring the city. Clementia explains that the seaborn's evolution has been rapidly outpacing their weapon engineers, even developing resistance towards their Type 3 weapons. Hence, the waterway program was born. Millenarium has been developing Type 4 weapons, biological weaponry which can induce death in seaborn nests. Once all the planted beacons successfully activate, they will be able to clear a waterway for aegir's home territories. However, concerned about the seaborn's behavior and the hunter's sudden return, Clementia decides to hold the tribunal at the Sophon Theatrum. At the Sophon Theatrum, Avitus explains its functions. The Sophon Theatrum is a terminal culminating all of aegir's knowledge and culture. Just as Jordi was about to ask the terminal some questions, they have to make way for the hunter's tribunal. During the tribunal, the scholars question whether the abyssal hunters will mutate into seaborn. While everyone's attention is focused on Gladia, Ulpianus secretly finds the Doctor. He relays some information related to the Abyssal Hunter project, requesting the Doctor to defend Gladia if necessary. Just then, Blandus, the former technical advisor of the Abyssal Hunter project, comes to their defense. He explains that the hunters have an autoadaptive junction implanted in them, which can trigger an autoimmune response to suppress the seaborn genes within their body. Gladia is then questioned regarding the reliability of Ulpianus' intel, who's now gone rogue. Clementia then concludes the tribunal, pronouncing the hunters innocent and issues an arrest warrant for Ulpianus. After the tribunal, Secunda interrogates two of Tulia's closest colleagues, Cassia and Lucilla. Cassia suggests that Tulia might have been a Church of the Deep cultist on the run. Theorizing that Tulia might have left the city when they welcomed the employees, the two dive to the city's last stop. They discover that the scientists might have encountered seaborn, bringing the case to a dead end. At the same time, The doctor meets Ulpianus after the tribunal. Ulpianus is suspicious of Aegir's plans, believing that some cultists have infiltrated the program. The doctor then proposes to assist Ulpianus, to which he accepts. Meanwhile, Clementia and Kelsit are discussing the events in Trimounts when Clementia receives a distress signal from the Legion tasked in beacon deployment in Nest 37, an important location for the waterway's completion. She sends Gladia and Laurentina to aid the ambushed soldiers. However, out of the 1,000+ men Clementia sent, only 26 of them survived. At the Sophotheatre, Jordi asks the Terminal about Aegir's technology and Briogan, but gets further lost as he might not be Briogan's descendant. Avitus trusts that Jordi will eventually discover his past. After that, Avitus meets with Cassia, who turns out to be his student. Avitus suggests that Cassia might be related to Tullia's disappearance, but Cassia changes the topic to one of Avitus' most popular documentaries, The Death of Life. She praises the prehistoric diary that heavily expresses the despair of the prehistoric civilization's destruction, pointing out Avitus' uncertainty of Aegir's future. Cassia then takes her leave. On the other hand, Secunda encounters Lucilla, who had some information to relay to the Prefecta. After hearing about Tullia's passion for seaweed cultivation, Secunda decides to conduct a search for locations suitable for enclosed hydroponics. Secunda and Irene split up to look for traces of Tullia. Not long after they separate, Secunda meets with her mentor Ulpianus. Ulpianus tells his mentee that the investigation has been misled. He also states his motives for returning to Aegir when Secunda questions him. Ulpianus is suspicious of the details around the waterway program and will help prevent Aegir from descending into disaster. He leaves just before Irene regroups with Secunda. The two then find an eagerly old facility at the edge of a dome. Inside, they discover that Tullia had already turned into a seaborn. With what little remains of her consciousness, Tullia manages to tell them that someone had been tampering with the waterway program's beacon signal. She had reported it to Cassia. However, Cassia, being a cultist, lured her to the city drain system and pushed her in it, in order to silence her. In an attempt to return to the city, she ate the seaborn that she encountered on the seabed. Before she's completely assimilated, Secunda mercy kills the former scientist. Switching to Clementia. With the Legion suffering heavy losses, Clementia decides to send the hunters to deploy the last beacon. But before entering the battlefield, the hunters must undergo a surgery to repair their auto-adaptive junctions. At the Abyssal Hunters lab, the hunters lie down in the regen gel before being anesthetized. Before the surgery begins, Landus is attacked by church cultists. The cultists threaten him to stop the operation and tell them how to turn off the Type 4 weapons. Thankfully, the hunters weren't fully asleep and they took down the cultists. The hunters were initially suspicious of Landus, but the attack on him, plus his determination in protecting the hunters, proved his innocence. Gladia criticizes the feasibility of the waterway program before urging Blandus to continue the operation. After Sea Patrol arrives at the lab, Blandus and Secunda reminisce about their past with Ulpianus. Blandus states that Ulpianus is only here to aid Aegir, and tells her not to focus too much on arresting Ulpianus. Not long after Secunda leaves to interrogate the captured cultists, the doctor enters the lab. Using the excuse of observing the hunters, the doctor secretly guides Ulpianus in infiltrating and investigating the laboratory. When the surgery ends, the hunters quickly rush to the port. The doctor and Blandus also leave afterwards. Ulpianus regroups with the doctor and states his findings. He discovered that the coordination between the beacons and weapons had been altered by someone of high ranking. He also revealed that he discovered the Church of the Deep had made contact with the Firstborn during their campaign. Ulpianus is suspicious of Blandus and rushes to the beacon tower, while the doctor goes to warn Clementia. With the Legion fighting the Seaborn swarm, the hunters were able to slip past them and deploy the beacon. Meanwhile, the doctor notifies Clementia about the tampered beacon and weapons. Clementia immediately orders the Legion to assist the hunters and retreat some fleets to defend the city. She also orders Little Handy to contact all supervisors for the beacons and weapons, but were unable to contact Blandus. At the beacon tower, Jordi is helping out the technicians in it. Since Briogan was involved in the tower's construction, and its controls are similar to that of Iberia's lighthouse, Jordi quickly gets the hang of it. Suddenly, Ulpianus knocks out the technicians and rushes to the center of the tower. Despite Ulpianus' warning, Geordie chases him down. Ulpianus meets with his old friend Blandus, but it's too late. The last beacon has been activated and the weapons are about to be launched. Blandus admits that he had been working with the church for a while and had made minor adjustments to the Type 4 weapons. 5 years ago, an accident happened within Ulpianus. The seaborn genes within Ulpianus had reached some kind of symbiosis with his own genes. Since then, Blandus constantly experimented on himself in order to recreate the accident. He revealed that he managed to recreate it within the hunters during the surgery. Believing that violence is futile, Blandus aims to recreate the phenomenon within the seaborn to delete their hostility against humankind. With his health declining, he invites Ulpianus to continue his work. Ulpianus rejects and condemns his arrogant actions before executing his former partner. Next, Geordie catches up with Ulpianus. Wanting to help the abyssal hunters, Geordie uses his knowledge about Briogan to gain authority over the tower's system and send the signal to the beacon in Nest 37. Over at Nest 37, the hunters notice that the seaborn began to rapidly reproduce instead of dying. The hunters also become sleepy when fighting them. Realizing that something's wrong within the city, the hunters attempt to rush back to Millenarium. However, they began to lose their sense of direction due to Blandus' modification. Suddenly, the last knight jumps into battle and fights the swarm, allowing the hunters to return to the city. Looks like instead of achieving symbiosis within seaborn and humans, Blandus' men had only nourished the seaborn and exposed the city's location to them. The seaborn, attracted by the beacon, began to turn the beacon tower into their nest. The only way to prevent the seaborn from spreading within the city is to eject the beacon tower into the depths of the sea. However, the linkage had been sabotaged by the church cultists. Believing that arbiters might have known about this beforehand, Geordie heads down to fix the linkage, while Ulpianus stays to eject the tower once it's fixed. Meanwhile, Clementia orders the lockdown of Type 4 weapons and attempts to evacuate the Doctor and Keltsid, but they were forced to abandon the ship when it starts to lose control. Using the artificial gravity system, the three managed to land safely in the Sophomphiatrum. However, the Sophomphiatrum seems to be isolated from the outer world, and in front of the terminal stands an odd-looking seaborn. Clementia recognizes it as Martus, one of the most prominent predecessor researchers who is presumed dead during an expedition into the Mantle Rooms. Martus revealed what happened during the expedition. Most of its members got lost in the maze created by the predecessors, and only Martus managed to reach its end. He saw Ishamila trapped in the chamber. When he approached the Leviathan, he saw visions of the first civilization's destruction and the threat looming over Terra. Believing that the Seaborn are Terra's best bet in preventing its demise, he freed them from the chamber, ate Ishamila's flesh, and secretly guided their evolution. Later on, he founded the Church of the Deep. Switching to the present, knowing that Keltsid was related to the predecessors, he requests her to help Wee-Mani guide their evolution to the skies. Monster and Clementia then began to attack the Seaborn. At the beacon tower, Secunda arrests some cultists and helps Geordie down the tower. She then chases down Cassia, who was talking to Arvitus earlier. Geordie defends Arvitus from the Seaborn's attack with his lantern. He's disappointed that Arvitus chose to watch Aegir's demise instead of trying to fight against it. Geordie also heavily criticizes Arvitus for not reporting Cassia to the Sea Patrol. Luckily, Irene arrives to defend against the Seaborn. After Geordie manages to fix the linkage sabotaged by Cassia, he and Irene prepare to return to the Eye of Iberia to help the Inquisitors and Penal Battalion. Ladia manages to rush over to the center of the beacon tower. Noticing that the terminal has been unlocked, Ulpianus immediately uses it to eject the beacon tower from Millenarium. Ladia attempts to save her colleague, but Ulpianus chose to sink into the depths along with the tower in order to learn more about the predecessors, Aegir, and the Seaborn. He swings his anchor at Ladia, forcing her to dodge, making her unable to catch up the sinking figure. Back to Clementia. After communications are restored, Clementia orders all troops to defend against the Seaborn type. Millenarium gradually reappears on water surface to fight alongside the Iberian forces. Somewhere in Millenarium, An injured Cassia attempts to sabotage the city framework by pulling its safety valve, but unexpectedly bumps into Lucilla. Cassia puts a poisonous seaweed on her neck and warns her to leave, but Lucilla risks her life to stop Cassia from pulling the safety valve. After that, Secunda catches up and arrests Cassia on the spot. With the cultist leader in the city now captured, the Legion and the Abyssal Hunters can focus on defending Millenarium against the seaborn. Unexpectedly, the seaborn within the beacon tower have assimilated with the abandoned nanomachines in it, viewing them as their kin, and supplying them with lots of bioenergy. Billions of nanomachines extend out from the tower and connect to every beacon with each other. The seaborn have formed the waterway connecting land and sea, restored communications in all aegir home territories, and reactivated the long-dormant Eye of Iberia lighthouses. Back at the Sophon Theatrum, Martus attempts to persuade Calcid one last time. However, Calcid and the Doctor refuse his request, stating that his actions will reduce civilization into nothing but a hollow concept. Seeing that the conversation was unsuccessful, Martus retreats, disappearing in front of them. Soon after that, Clementia receives a call from one of Aegir's home territories. It's from Gladia's mother, Council Horatia. Horatia boldly proclaimed that using Millenarium as a port to connect to the nations on land, Aegir will help to improve their technology and resolve their internal conflicts. However, Calcid and Gladia believe that Aegir doesn't fully understand the terrestrial nations, which may cause those nations to turn against Aegir instead of fighting them side by side. Later on, Aegir broadcasts to the entire continent of Terra, requesting them to unite against the threat looming above Terra and the Seaborn under their leadership. The Inquisition helps Millenarium in suppressing the Seaborn tide while waiting for reinforcements from Aegir home territories. They should arrive within a week via the newly established waterway, which is much faster than Millenarium's ability to hold out the tide. While cleaning up the Seaborn in the city, Skadi encounters Martus escorting his kin out of it. Martus recognizes that Skadi has Isha Mila's blood in her and subdues her. As he ponders on why the firstborn chose to continue its life in her, the Doctor arrives in time to wake up Skadi. Skadi slices the Seaborn's hand. Before retreating, Martus is ecstatic that the Doctor and Skadi know each other. He reminds us that we play an important role in the future, and that we'll meet again. This encounter was witnessed by Clementia through her little handy. However, Clementia chose not to reveal it to Horatia, fearing Aegir might manipulate them. After the events in Millenarium, Avitus confesses everything during an interrogation. Surprising enough, the council chose not to punish him and even allowed him to remain in the city. But Avitus decides to travel across Terra and invites Geordie to come along. Geordie remains conflicted with whether to follow Avitus or stay in Iberia to help the Inquisition. Ulpianus managed to survive in the sunken beacon tower and follows Martus into a seaborn nest. He questions how the conflict in Millenarium is related to the awakening of the firstborn. Martus promises that he will provide Ulpianus with answers about everything, under the condition that he must join We Many. Risking complete assimilation, Ulpianus decides to follow him. So yeah, I guess that's it. I just checked the upcoming events for EN server, and for now I'm not sure if I want to do a story summary for Executor Author's event. Let me know in the comments if you want me to. And I don't plan to do a story summary for So Long Adele because At Night already made a story summary with a lot better quality than mine. But I will make a story summary in the future when whatever this event's name comes. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, check out my channel I guess, and I'll see ya on the next one.